Hey Joy family, happy Tuesday. It's Pastor Mark again coming to you from my office. And I'm so glad to be bringing these little studies on Tuesdays and Thursdays with you. And if you remember, we've been in Ephesians chapter 6 talking about opposition we may face in life and following Jesus. And the truth is that when we do follow Jesus in our everyday lives, we will face oppositions. We will face trials. We will face trouble. And one of our greatest opponents is God's enemy, Satan, who seeks to attack us, trying to discourage us, make our lives more stressful and painful so that we focus more on our troubles than we do on Jesus. And although these attacks may sometimes even happen in the physical realm, they're spiritual in nature. In fact, we call them spiritual attacks. And the Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 6 urges all of us who are following Jesus to stand firm against these attacks. Now, in our own strength, that's impossible. So he tells us to put on the power of God, who is more powerful than Satan, more powerful than anything and anyone. So he says, put on the power of God. And he likens it to the armor a soldier wears in battle. Only for Paul, he's talking about the armor of God. Now, last week we talked about putting on the belt of truth. That was the first piece of armor, which protects our witness. It frees us to follow Jesus, and it serves as a foundation for our lives with him. And that was in verse 14 of Ephesians 6. Now, the last part of that verse contains our next piece of armor. It says, Paul says, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Actually, the breastplate was rather unique for Roman soldiers in the day and gave them a huge advantage when they fought. Basically, what a breastplate was, and we'll put it up right here in our picture, a breastplate was the piece of armor that covered their torso. It was constructed of strips of metal that were fastened together with leather, and what it was designed to do was deflect any darts or arrows or even a sword attack which would get through the shield and the sword that soldier would fail to stop with their shield or sword. And it was standard issue for Roman soldiers in the days of Augustus, around the time of Jesus, around the time of Paul's. And what it would do, it would protect all your major organs that it covered in your torso, especially your heart. I mean, you could get a lot of different wounds, but if an arrow pierced your heart, you were pretty much a goner. So this piece of armor protected life. Now, our spiritual armor, this breastplate of righteousness, protects our spiritual life, our heart, from attacks of Satan, who tries to trip us up to make us less effective. Actually, Satan attacks us many different ways, doesn't he? Just as darts were hurled at the soldier, Satan hurls his own arsenal at our heart. Some of the ways that he tries to attack our heart is to make us despair. Have you ever gotten despaired or bogged down? Sometimes it's in the weight of things coming on you, or sometimes it's in just your own failures and you're just like, oh, I can't seem to get out of this. And it's almost like walking through mud and we get bogged down. And because of that, we kind of just become less effective and we stop. Sometimes Satan creates doubt in us. And he tries to create cracks. Trying to find cracks in the armor kind of deal. Any way that he can get in to cause doubt in us, doubt in God's love for us, doubt in our ability to keep trusting in him, or doubt that his righteousness is enough for us, as we're going to talk about it in a minute. But just create doubts that we really are, or we really do belong to him. And then another way he tries to attack our heart is through distraction. Kind of hitting us from the blind side, opening up that blind side. So to get us to looking at other things that are important rather than what God says is important. And we can get consumed with that. We can get consumed with that in life, can't we? We can get consumed with all the little details that, in the grand scheme of things aren't as important in focusing on Jesus. So that's how Satan attacks us. So how does this breastplate then spiritually protect us? Well, Paul says this is a breastplate not of metal, but it's of righteousness. Isn't that cool? Righteousness is strong enough to withstand any attack. It can withstand the attack of despair. So it's strong. And then it's also the metal flaps on the breastplate, as you see there, they kind of overlapped, which means they covered completely, or it would there weren't any cracks where an attack could get in, and righteousness does that for us. And it also so it helps us withstand doubt. And then the plate went all the way around the torso, so that even if the soldier was distracted by something, he couldn't get hit by the blind side because it was covering that as well. So what are we talking about with this righteousness that Paul says is the breastplate of righteousness? Well, it's not our righteousness. It's not our ability to do good. It's not our ability to become right with God, to do enough good things or obey enough or have the right DNA or right legacy or the right spiritual acts. It's nothing like that. Actually, Paul talks in Romans chapter 3. He says, no one is righteous. No, not one. It's not our righteousness. It's not our ability to do right that we become righteous. Rather, it's God's righteousness. God is righteous for us. It's this righteousness that saves us. It takes the place of our attempts to be right with God and places the righteousness or the perfection of Jesus, who came and lived the perfect life we could never live, and places that in us. In fact, Romans chapter 5 says, by one man's disobedience, and talking about Adam, sin entered the world. And in the same way, by one man's obedience, Jesus, many will be made righteous. So it's because of Jesus' righteous. And it's a covering for our life. Isaiah talks about that it's this robe of righteousness that completely covers us. There's no holes in this armor. And this is something that's not what we do. Righteousness isn't what we do. It's who we are. God covers us. It becomes a part of us and who we are through Christ. And then another really neat thing about the armor, this breastplate in the Roman army, is that, and made it very unique, is that it was custom fit to each soldier. It was molded to them, which made it not transferable, but rather it made it personal. And because it was molded to them, it fit them so well that it almost became a part of them. So they didn't feel like I had to put something on. Rather, this is a part of me, and they could move very freely and things like that. And it's from this. It's from God's righteousness being a part of us, who we are, rather than what we do, that we can then live lives of obedience to Him. But it's only once we have His righteousness. So this is what Paul's saying, and it protects us. So then when we do fall short, and we do fail, which we will, Satan can't successfully attack us because it's not about what we do. And it's not about what we did. It's about what Jesus does for us. And it's built upon that. So in that, Satan can't find a weak spot. And really, this breastplate of righteousness has huge advantages when we're living out our life, when we're fighting or living out our life in obedience and following what Jesus has for us, with our heart protected, knowing that our heart is protected. We don't have to be to despair. We don't have to doubt. We don't have to get distracted. Rather, because of this, just like the Roman soldiers, they gave them a huge advantage in battle. It gives us a huge advantage in life. First of all, that breastplate provides us focus. Just as the soldier then could focus, he didn't have to worry about getting arrows and things that would pierce his major organs. So therefore, he could focus on the fight. He didn't have to, worry about every little thing. So we can focus on God, because we have His righteousness, rather than worrying if we're doing it right. Steve Brown always likes to say, we get to dance without looking at our feet. Rather, our focus can be on enjoying the dance. Well, our focus can be enjoying God, enjoying Jesus, hearing from Him, simply following Him, rather than saying, did I just do that right? Oh no, I just did this. Oh, I stepped out of line. Now he's not going to like it. So I better do something to make him happy. And then we're out there and we're doing all these things and losing our focus on what He's called us to do. And that is to enjoy Him and to reflect Him, so that He can be seen in and through our lives. So not only does it give us focus, but it also gives us confidence. Because if we don't have to worry about that, we don't have to worry about our heart. Our heart is secure. Our righteousness is secured, not in our ability to do right or wrong. So therefore, we can't lose it if it's up to Christ. So therefore, we have confidence that nothing can separate us from his love. Nothing can separate us from a relationship with him. Therefore, that's one less thing to worry about. Knowing that we're fully protected. So now we can do that. And that provides the last benefit of this breastplate of righteousness, which is freedom. It frees us then to follow him. If we can keep our focus on him and we're confident that nothing can separate us from his love, then we're free. We're free to follow him. And just as the soldier, it was custom fit to him. It weighed about 20 pounds, which wasn't much for them. And they could wear it and they could move. They had freedom of movement. They were free. They weren't weighed down. In God's righteousness, in us and on us, covering us, becoming a part of us, we're not weighed down by our own self-effort, by our abilities to do things right. Rather, his righteousness becomes a part of us, and because of that, we're free to move, and we're free to follow. So this is what Paul is talking about. You know, spiritual attacks will come to us, and Satan will try to attack our heart, and will try to take us down and to break our heart. Nothing can hurt us more. You know, I know I can take physical attack. I can take physical pain. But when your heart gets attacked, you know what, when your heart breaks or something, it hurts. And so Paul's saying this is what needs to be protected and what the soldier would have protected. So he's saying put on this breastplate that protects your heart. And what protects your heart is God's righteousness in us and for us. And this righteousness is only received one way, and that's through faith. It's a righteousness through faith, through trusting that God's righteousness, that Jesus is perfect enough for us, and his perfect life is enough. And when we can trust that, man, we're free to follow, and we're protected. So that's our piece of armor today. And be encouraged with that. Now, real quickly, this is Easter week, so be praying about Sunday as we have our Easter message, and we have a couple of outreaches we're going to be doing. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to be introducing some ways that we can stand out as God's light to our neighbors. Some fun ways we can do it, some ways of service we can do it. And so just be checking out our Facebook page. I'll be sending out some emails this week as well with some ways that we can continue to be the church. Remember, the church is in a building. So just because we can't meet physically doesn't mean we cease to be the church. God has called us. God has called us to be a light, his light, in our world. So be encouraged with that this morning.